All right. Hi, everybody. It's Allison Meredith here with Holston IT, and I'm delighted to be with you today on our fourth session about how to manage kids at home while keeping your sanity and your productivity. Today, we're going to be talking about communicating with your kids and managing when they don't get it done, whatever the it is. So let's get right into that. I'm going to share my screen here. And so here we go. How to maintain your sanity and productivity with kids at home. Yesterday, we talked about chores, and I've had some good questions regarding that. I gave you some examples from my family. We have a whole lot of kids. If you just have one or two or three kids, hopefully you can still take those ideas and implement them. You'll have a simpler solution, but I think the principles I shared will still be helpful to you. So if you missed yesterday's session, go check that out. It was really helpful. Today, I'm going to be addressing questions from several directions. What if my kids don't obey me? What if they don't do what I ask? How do I motivate my kids to get their lessons done in a timely manner so they have more energy to do other stuff, more time to do other stuff? All right, so we're going to go over three things. You need to be the adult in the room. You need to communicate clearly and briefly, and then listen to them play back what you've commanded. And then you got to use the sandwich strategy. So what does that mean? Have you ever heard your parents, when you were a kid, tell you there's two sides of the stick, there's choice and consequence. You can't pick up one side without picking up the other. If you haven't heard that, then you get to be the one to start this generational trend. It was certainly a thing in my family. You've got to stick here, kids. There's the choice and there's the consequence. When you choose this, the consequence comes with it. You don't get to pick the consequence unless you make, right? And if you make the choice, the consequence is just going to come right with it. This is a really brief webinar, so I don't have the time and energy to talk about all the different kinds of consequences that you can give out in your authority as a parent. You need to think through that, and we can even have another webinar sometime and talk through some of those options. But that is the big, it's very simple, but I recommend you even grab a stick from your yard. You don't have to make the signs. You can just explain it to your kids. Help them have that visual. Now let me talk some about be the adult in the room. What occurs to you first when your kids misbehave? Where are you on this little spectrum that I'm showing in my screen share? Listen, I am a human. I am a daughter of Eve, and with that comes the humble ability to reflect the image of God and also innate sinfulness. I have been at level 0 or 1 or 2 many days. All right. Oh, I can't believe my kids are being so childish. This is ridiculous. But can we just all agree that that's really me being childish? I mean, haven't you all heard a parent say, my kids whine all the time? Isn't that almost hilarious? The adult needs to learn to stop whining, right? So when we're talking about kids behaving, it's got to start with you. It's got to start with your mindset. And so what occurs to you first? When you have these level 0, 1, 2 thoughts, or even this level 5 thought, oh, this is such an inconvenience. Okay, that's all right. Own it. It is an inconvenience. That's what parenting is. Parenting is inconvenient. So work on checking your own mindset that when you think about your kids misbehaving, it comes with, oh, this is normal. They're childish. They're kids. They're children. They need me to help them learn how to behave. The next thing I want you to think about is when your kids misbehave, what motivates your response? Now, again, I've been at level 0, 1, 2. I know pretty much every human has. You're just thinking, they did that to me. They interrupted this. They messed up my productivity. I just want to get them back. I'm just so mad. It happens, okay? But recognize it when it happens and let go of it. Set it aside. Lock yourself in the closet if you need to. Just please don't confront your kids in that mindset. Don't. Whatever you do won't work. Even if you're in the middle, it's like, I just want peace and quiet. Okay, I want it. I am providing bread for this family. Okay, I got to put bread on the table, and to do that, I need some peace and quiet. I mean, on the one hand, that's totally true and accurate. On the other hand, do you hear I, me in that? You're destined to fail. So acknowledge, gosh, oh, I really do have a big responsibility. I gotta get bread on the table. To do that, I need some peace and quiet. I'm going to get that peace and quiet. And the way I'm going to get it is I got to teach my kids how to behave. They need to be taught time and again, over and over. So you get to be the adult in the room, guys. That's critical to start with that. When you communicate with your kids, you've got to keep it brief and simple. I know there's a variety of people of all skill sets and personality types on this call. Not everybody has this struggle, but I'm a talker. So many times I've tripped over my own words because I go into my kids like, guys, I just have so much work to get done. And I just need you to be quiet a minute because you just, blah, 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 blah. They don't understand. I mean, how are they supposed to sift through that? So through my own failures, I have learned to just pause and say, okay, what's the main thing I need them to do? Okay, just think through it. Just take a moment, think through what you need to say, and then say it very brief and clearly. Susan, you must play with these toys right here until the timer beeps. If you don't, whatever, okay? There's got to be a consequence. So very brief, just here's what you must do. The next point about your communication with your expectations of your kids' behavior is make it super clear. Pause and think for a minute. Many of you on this webinar have suddenly and unexpectedly been thrust into being a home educating parent, right? You didn't sign up for this. I get it. You didn't sign up for this. This is in complete interruption. And on top of your kids being home all the time, now you're trying to get work done at home. So this is a totally new idea that you're with your kids during the whole day. You're doing your professional work. They are doing their lessons. And then at home at night, you're the family, right? Well, you know, newsflash, you're the family all day, but now you've got this new dynamic that when you used to go your separate ways to get your work done in the morning and early afternoon, now they're all together with you. So you do not want to ruin your overall parent-child relationship by mixing up and confusing what you're commanding them to do. So you need to recognize that as a parent, there's going to be times that you just say, hey, do you want to go fly a kite with me? All right, that's a pretty clear question. They don't necessarily have to. Hey, do you want to go throw a Frisbee with me? Hey, do you want to read this book for me, with me, whatever. Also, would you like to help me wash these dishes? You got to watch out, because if you use that language, would you like to help me wash these dishes? And it's the same language, would you like to go throw a Frisbee with me? Then you can't get upset when they say no, okay? Because you just asked them a question. You want to train them to obey, so you need to train yourself to communicate clearly. Now, with my own self, I use the word must. And so I'll just, as a check for myself, it's kind of a double way to check, because I can say, Sally, come wash the dishes with me. That's a command, right? But I want to make it super clear, so I use the word must. Sally, you must come wash these dishes with me, or whatever it is. So I emphasize that in these two examples. All right, the third and critical part when you're communicating anything with your kids, you want your kids to do is make them repeat it back to you. Susan, you must sit here on the couch and read this book until the timer beeps. If you get off the couch before then, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now what do you have to do? And you just gotta wait. You gotta listen. And when they get it wrong, no, until you get the kid to say back, oh, I gotta sit here till the timer beeps and read these books. Yes. And if I don't, okay, get them to say it back to you. When a lot of times when the kids are really young, I would make them hold up fingers, and I would say, Johnny, you need to do this, and I would hold one finger, and this, and this. Now, can you say it back to me? I need to do this, and this, and this. And maybe it was as simple as, I need to brush my teeth, use the potty, and get into bed. Okay, what do you need to do, Johnny? I need to brush my teeth, use the potty, get into bed. Okay, that's really helpful for the super young group. When you are doing all this, you want to use the sandwich strategy. I love you, do this or else, I love you. So let's look at some examples with that. And that the sandwich strategy comes from something I learned years ago when I was studying education and management of kids. I was a professional teacher before I became a mom. And there's this concept that I love you doesn't literally have to be those 3 words. Okay, but you're just putting the meat in the middle. You're recognizing that kids are desperate for positive reinforcement. Not only that, but whatever you want them to do, it's going to be way more likely to get done if you put it within the context of positive, happy things. All right, so here's an example. You've got Johnny's sitting there drawing a picture when he's supposed to be doing his spelling lesson. So do you walk up and say, what are you doing? Do your spelling. No, 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 no. You say, this artwork is beautiful. Okay, that's a version of I love you. It's not exactly, but I mean, it's a positive comment. And then very clear, right now you must, see that word must, you must stop drawing and do your spelling lesson. If you don't get your spelling lesson done in the next 15 minutes, then you've lost 15 minutes of your screen time this afternoon. So what must you do, Johnny? And so then you listen and make sure, I got to get my spelling lesson done. And then because blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then you followed up with that that version of I love you. I am so proud of how responsible you are. Look at your kids, look in their eyes, not just eye contact, but eye level. Okay. Like eye level, get down, squat down so that you're eye level with them. Makes it very powerful. And then another example, you can say, I'm so glad you're a part of our family. You must give your brother some space. Surely it's not just the Meredith house. I like to say, the good book says, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. I like to also mention, behold how rare and unusual it is when brothers dwell in unity. It is rare and it is unusual. But you know what? If you have siblings, if you have more than one kid, there's hardly anything more important in your life than teaching them to love each other. And it is not something you can do with a lecture. It is something you must do time and again, over and over, patiently, over the course of many years. So there's just some examples of what you can say with that. With this whole idea of choice and consequence, all right, with my stick, I want you to be prepared that there are going to be some kids, perhaps some of your kids, who are very strong-willed. One of our sons about 3 or 4 years ago was having some behavioral issues. And so we tried taking away his Xbox turn. If he didn't do whatever, he would lose his Xbox turn for that day or half of his Xbox, whatever it was, okay? But eventually he got to where he had slotted up the next month that he wasn't going to be on the Xbox. In other words, just to be clear, I had used my whole choice and consequence system, right? Okay, Johnny, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Very clear. And he just demonstrated that he didn't really care. He was so bent on doing things his way instead of what I was hoping he would choose, that even though I knew he loved playing Xbox, he just kind of wanted me to know that, not worth it. I'd rather do my. So what do you do in that situation? Oh, guys, I wish I could give you some fairy dust. You could just sprinkle on your brain to make you a perfect parent, or on your kids to make them perfectly well behaved. It ain't gonna happen. It is just hard work. I will tell you that with 2 of my kids in their teenage years, when I have just backed off and worked really hard to give them as much space as I could and to give them as few commands as I could, I've been happier and they've been happier. I'm not saying you should let them go light the house on fire. I am just saying that I think some of us, I certainly am in this camp, I tend to assume that I have the authority to dictate a lot of things about their day and their schedule and what I want them to do. And so sometimes I overuse that. So look for ways that you can minimize how many commands you give those strong-willed children, and just have minimum standards of expectation. All right, I want to kind of wrap up here in the last few minutes by emphasizing your tone of voice. This goes back to what I shared at the beginning with you about be the adult in the room. I've pulled out a few of my favorite resources. Here's one. This is a Henry Trumbull book called Hints on Child Training. And then also, I got to tell you, it's one of the best parenting books I've ever read, and I've read a lot. This one's just called Parenting. It's by Paul David Tripp. The thing I love about this book is it's all about mindset. This book, it's not so much a 10 steps to do to make you a better parent. It's how do you think about being a mom or a dad. How do you think about being a mom or a dad in the midst of your kids being sinners, in the midst of you needing God's grace, in the midst of all the stress that's just packed down on you? So I highly recommend, it's written by Paul David Tripp. It's called Parenting. And then this book by Trumbull called Hints on Child Training, it's an old one. I think it was originally published 100 years ago or so. I'm just going to read you a couple of sentences. Scolding is the outburst of strong feeling that struggles for the mastery under the pressure of some outside provocation. It may give physical relief to the one who indulges in it, but it does little to change your children's behavior. If a child has done something wrong, that child needs talking to, but no parent should talk to a child while the parent is unable to talk in a natural tone of voice and with carefully measured words. If the parent is tempted to speak rapidly or to multiply words without stopping to weigh those words, or to show an excited state of feeling, the parent's first duty is to gain entire self-control. Until then, no use to try to attempt any measure of training up your children. Now, listen, I've lost my temper more times than I can count. You just ask my kids and they'll admit to it, right? They've seen it. I'm not proud of that, but I am emphasizing that I see too often in parenting circles, oh yeah, I lost my temper today. It's a big deal, guys. It's not something to blow off. It's not something to say, yeah, it happens to all of us. Okay, it does. It does happen to all of us, but it's wrong. It's something we need to repent of and change, ask the good Lord to help us change our ways on that, because it's not helping our kids. So it's 2:17. I've just got a few more minutes. Let me see if there's any questions and then we'll wrap up. Abby, do we have any questions?
Right now it looks pretty clear.
All right. Well, please feel free to type your questions into the chat if you're on the Zoom webinar with us, or type them into the Facebook comment feed if you're there. So let me just wrap up by saying that often in life, we are frustrated because we don't have the right answers. But more often, and we don't always realize this, more often the real problem is that we're not asking the right questions. Many of us, just in the last 10 days, have been thrust into this crazy world of managing our kids' education at home and just managing our kids in general at home. Well, we're suddenly working from home and we used to be driving to an office. All right, that's plan B. Nobody expected this. And so we're just yearning for answers. Guys, I got to tell you that before you start spending a whole lot of energy looking for all the answers, you need to make sure you're asking the right questions. All right, here's some of the questions you need to ask. How can you be the adult in the room with your own kids? How can you communicate to them clearly in a way that they will understand? How do you teach them about life, choices, and consequences? How do you just make double sure that your kids know you love them? I mean, think back for a minute to when you first brought that baby home. Oh my, wow. I like to say every home is a homeschool. If home is a place where you live and school is a place where you learn, then every home is a homeschool, right? So in a very real sense, you started homeschooling your kids when you brought them home, right after they were born, all right? Maybe you've been outsourcing a large measure of that educational management for many years, and now suddenly you've got to help manage it, or maybe be the manager of your kids' education. You've got this. You've got this. Ask the right questions. How can you communicate with your kids in such a way that hopefully they want to obey, and when they choose not to, you can be clear and level-headed and give them the consequences which really they were expecting. So often when our kids misbehave, they're really just testing us. They want the consequences that we've promised. They won't say that, okay? They won't say that because it's really kind of subconscious, but when we give them the consequences that they knew were coming, that's a way to assure them, okay, there's some stability here. Mom really does love me. All right, so with that, I'll sign off. I hope you'll join us tomorrow for our final session. We'll be talking about some just high-level overviews of educating your kids. I've got a few great resource tips to share about teaching English and writing and grammar and teaching math. Just a quick high-level overview. Even if you're using the curriculum that your school has mandated to you, I still think you'll get some helpful tips from this. So I hope to see you then. Thanks so much.